objects, and they had $22 million sunk into the program before they shut it down. Just the fact that he mentioned that program was underway and active and no one knew about it goes to show you that there's definitely programs in the deep black that are happening all around us, and we have no clue about what they're studying and what they're finding out. And it also then leads to the whole scenario that you're talking about, that there seems to be a big push to start disclosing whatever is going to happen. And I do get the feeling, like you do, that there's something coming down the road very, very shortly here that's going to be probably earth-shaking, hopefully not earth-shattering, but earth-shaking at least.
Well, it can be two things, Michael. Okay, one is they're going to come down and they're going to give us, well, how to serve man, not the cookbook version, but, how to improve Earth, how to, not have to use all our natural resources and all that stuff. They're going to give us that information, right, and help us, to not have wars anymore or any of this stuff, right? Or it could be like Orson Welles, War of the Worlds. I mean, how can I say it? Go back for the centuries. All the, the kings that wanted to grab more land and kill and kill and kill. They just wanted more and more. They wanted to rule the world. Well, guess what? There could be aliens out there, creatures from another planet that look at the same way. Instead of, trying to conquer their planet, because they've maybe already done it, now they're out looking for other planets to conquer. So, it could go one of two ways. I mean, that's what, again, I always mention Stephen Hawkins. He kept saying, we don't do this. You're stupid. Don't give out our address. I mean, you don't know who's going to show up at your door. I'm not going to give somebody my address to my mini farm. I'm not going to tell you how to get here. Because, you know what, I don't lock my doors, but I don't want to come home and find everything gone. So, I mean, I don't want to one day wake up and find out we don't have a planet left. Of course, in that case, I wouldn't be waking up, would I?
Yes, and obviously we don't want to give out the Earth's email address to people we don't know, that's for sure.
Well, that's like telling the neighbors about your sex life. God, why would you want to tell everybody where you're at? I mean, come on. Again, I get a kick out of these group of people go out up to, I'm not talking about you, okay? So please don't take it that way. But out in Nevada, okay, they go out into the farm. And they got all these high-powered lasers, and they see these objects out there, and they're shining these lasers at these objects. I mean, and they're hoping that they're going to come close to them when they're shining these objects. Again, I don't know if that's a smart idea. I mean, I'd rather observe them for where they're at. I don't want one, a couple hundred feet away from me.
Right. I always wonder about what is going to happen when we actually do have open contact, and how it will be, and how will we react, and what will, I'll often think, what will life be the next morning after we learn that aliens are on the planet or visiting the planet, and we have to go back to work the next day, and we have to go pay our bills, and we have to kind of do what we normally need to do during the day. But society is not going to really be the same after that at one point.
Well, two things can happen. You remember Watts?
Yeah.
Okay, you remember the riots and the burnings and all that stuff? Again,
yes.
At this point, I'm going to probably get myself again on a recording somewhere from Homeland Security or whoever, or DOA. But I'm going to say this. I mean, how can we be so stupid to think if we get visited by an alien race that they're going to be friendly? And if they're not friendly, what could we have to protect ourselves with? And do you think the government is going to tell you if they're friendly or not? You know, they could be so hostile, but you think they would sit there and say, guess what? We're going to be, maybe invaded sometime shortly by an alien race that don't like humans. I mean, they're not going to tell you that. The same way, honestly, if an asteroid was coming towards Earth and was going to take out the whole planet, you think they're going to sit there, and they knew about it for a year ahead of time, okay? You think they're going to tell the public? That they're going to wait to the very last moment, because if they say anything, the government will lose control. I really feel this. People will start panicking. People will start thinking of themselves and their families and nobody else. And we could be in for a hell of a ride.
Yes, exactly. And that's something we need to think about and talk about as well. We just can't shove it underneath the rug, that's for sure.
Well, people, think I'm so negative about, alien life and UFOs out there. But till somebody shows me that, it's going to be rosy and all that stuff, and cracking open a bottle of champagne, I'm going to think the negative first. I have to think about defending my family, then my neighbors, then, my society. And that's how I'm going to think. I mean, I don't know if they are friendly or not. I mean, with abductions and with cattle, what's been happening to cattle and horses and people missing in the national forest, people going on the road trip and disappearing, people missing out of their houses all over the world. We're talking a huge amount of people that disappear, and there's just no signs of where they ever went.
Yes. Yeah, the only solace that I try to get out of this entire situation of fear and trepidation is the fact that, if an advanced race wanted to probably get rid of us, like in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, I think that they probably could have done that a long time ago, well before we developed the atomic weapons that we have and became a little dangerous ourselves. They probably could have done that way back when, if they were intending to do so. So,
but I got a little qualm on that. Okay, now we're sending out our signals. We're still sending out our signals from 2 locations, and I know even China now is sending out signals. Okay, so we're beaming out our address. We're sending out signals out in space. Now, okay, maybe we have sent a signal to the wrong person out there. Okay,
right.
That could be where, you're saying, oh, it could have happened, centuries ago or 100 years ago or 50 years ago. Well, guess what? It's always maybe that wrong person out there. So if the wrong person gets our signal, we don't know what they do. We don't even know. I really strongly feel that we are on a reboot on this planet. I don't think this is our first generation of humans walking the earth. I don't think it's a second or third. I mean, it's been too many things. It shows that humans, or something similar to humans, walked on this earth long before they say man has. And it's just too much proof of it. And I don't understand. They can just brush it off. I mean, if you go in Utopia or some of these countries where, you're up in an airplane, you look down and you see these big miles long directions, like, pointing to a certain place. That we didn't have the technology. We haven't ever had the tech. We don't even have probably the technology right now to do what that was done, or as accurate as that was. And it was just so many different things that it was created long before, our capability to do it. So it tells me that something, was on this earth. So maybe, again, I like always point out, maybe we're an experiment. And maybe this experiment's close to being over. I don't know.
Yes. I hope, and I often wonder, there was a scene in the movie 2001, A Space Odyssey, where the astronaut that finally survived the entire ordeal of how the computer taking over the craft, and then the extraterrestrials finding him and grabbing him and putting him into a what looks like a bedroom situation, but it was probably just a laboratory to stare at him and evaluate him. But I often thought that the idea of the entire human race being judged upon one human being, like it was an astronaut in that movie, was a fascinating story. Just think if either one of us turned out to be that specimen that determined whether the human form on this planet should continue or not. That would be quite a burden to carry.
Oh, yeah. It would be. And maybe we're nothing more than a zoo. I have one person, claims that we're nothing more than a computer program. We're in the metrics, that everything is fake. And, he's been sending me information all the time, trying to prove his case that, we don't really exist. I mean, we're all just numbers. And, I don't know. There's so many different things out there. I mean, do we actually know?
Well, I would imagine that some people know more than others. And the problem is probably the answers to those deep questions like that might be very complicated. Maybe not what people would assume when they found out about it. So that's a fascinating subject about what the truth is and where we can find it, and then when we find it, whether we can handle it.
Yeah, well, maybe we're still young enough that we might find out. Look at it that way. Now, I got questions to ask you, okay? You're a lawyer. You started out you did some interesting things for what? Out in California. Why don't you explain a little things about you for people, get to know you for your Sunday show?
Well, sure. Thanks. I actually, I'm a local guy here in the state of Washington. Went to Washington State University, so I'm a cougar. Went through their broadcasting department there, radio and television, and graduated with a degree. And I had an opportunity my first job offer, like yours back in the old days, Gary, was a little station out of Twin Falls, Idaho, offered me a very small stipend to be a cub reporter out there in the hinterlands. And then my brother, who was actually majoring in fashion design, he decided to move to California and go to graduate school at the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising. So I had the option, Twin Falls, Idaho, or Los Angeles.
Well, I know which one I would have picked. L.A. would have been number one on my thing. Idaho, no way.
Yeah, so that's what I did. I moved to California after college, lived there for about 11 years or so, doing all the things that people need or want to do when they move to Hollywood. My very first corporate position out of college was being Shaker the Country Bear at Disneyland. That was a fantastic job. I really enjoyed that, actually. And, of course, I did a lot of other things. Actually got a job being a tour guide at Universal Studios, which was fascinating, and really getting into the film business and movies and knowing all the details and the behind-the-scenes stuff. At one point, probably my high point of a job in show business was I was the backstage host at Universal Studios Amphitheater, where Sinatra would open the season every year. All the rock and roll and all the comics came through, and wonderful artists like Willie Nelson, Linda Ronstadt, even comics like George Carlin.
Oh, hey, George.
Yeah.
You remember the other day I was telling you about a comic I couldn't remember the name? There you hit it on, George.
There you go.
He had a good philosophy. Really good. You know what he said? He didn't believe in God. He said there's no such thing as God. And he even said that to the day he died, there was no God. And you know what? If you really look at his philosophy, hey, it was screwed up. But you know what? It really makes a lot of sense.
Well, and the way he described it, I think it was very believable. The idea that God being what we believe God is probably a very, very small picture of what the great force in the universe actually is. But he was quite a guy, and I really enjoyed spending hours alone with him, actually, in the backstage green room before the show and after the show, just listening to him rant and rave and talking seriously, about this world. He was quite a deep thinker himself.
Oh, yeah. I just remember,